Welcome to another episode of Make Mental Health Matter, where I talk to guests specifically on Wednesdays. We are sharing their warrior journey through whatever they've been through in this thing that we call life, really showcasing how you can, whether it's going through trauma, cancer, any other mental health challenge or experience throughout your life, and really into that piece of hope. If you are watching this for the very first time and you happen to be watching on YouTube, please make sure you click down that subscribe button so that you don't miss another episode. Or if you're watching on any of the TV streaming platforms, make sure you add it into your wish list, your watch list, your want to watch list, whatever that list may be called. I should probably find that out one day what they're actually called, but I'll get to that. Either way, just make sure that you join us. I do this show every single Wednesday at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time and Mondays at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And without further ado, I am bringing on one of my former guests, which I'm so excited because from where she was when she first came onto the show to where she is today is a drastic change. And that's why I'm so excited to bring her warrior story today to all of you. So without further ado, Alex, thank you so much for joining me again.
Hi, Kelly. Hi, world. Whoever's out there and in streaming land. How's it going?
Yes, I am so glad. I am honored to bring you back onto the show. I know it's been almost a year and a half ish since
Right?
you were on. So tell or update the audience what's going on.
Okay, well, it's been a crazy year and a half. When I was on your show the last time, I was in active addiction. Um, I was pretty sick, and I was living in a very toxic, very dangerous, very uh, life-threatening situation. And in October, I made the decision after having my life be threatened for the last time just long story short, for 2 years. I had lived with someone who was um, in an active addiction as well, who happened to be in a meth-induced psychosis for 2 years, and thought I had people hiding in the apartment, and subsequently thought I had people that I had killed his father, and that I was having an affair with his best friend, and woke me up in the middle of the night in a sheer panic. He walked out the door, I locked the door, and I listened to him scream and holler and chase someone in the woods behind our house, and sat there and asked God, why was I so conditioned to know how to save my life at the hands of someone who said they loved me? And that's where I began my journey. In October, my one of my oldest dear friends, whom I call family, drove all the way out to Michigan, picked me up with what little I could carry, and drove me back here. Well, that wasn't really the end of all the trauma. I dealt with some other very toxic situations, but as of October 9th, I stayed sober. I stopped using meth. I got clean, and I came here to Colorado to get my life back. But it wasn't until February actually, that I just couldn't understand why I wasn't getting better, why all the therapy I was in, why going in treatment and doing all of those things was just not working. Why was I not happier? Why did I still want to die? Why did Kelly have to reach out to me and say, "Are you okay?" Because I really still wanted to die. The borderline personality disorder that I suffer with, that I was diagnosed with in 2017, along with substance use disorder, and the chronic PTSD or the CPTSD and things like that, that we're, dealing with every day, living in so much flight mode, not only the chemical reactions, but everything that goes along with it. So anyway, I got clean in October. October 9th is what I used for my clean date, because that was when I totally separated myself from the substance, from the environment, from the toxicity, and the danger that I was in. But even though I didn't use, I still wasn't healing. And one day, lo and behold, I was actually listening to a song by Jelly Roll, Save Me. And I had put my hands up in the air, and I was like, why, God, what is wrong? Why am I going through this? Why am I going through all of this struggle? Long story short, God, I bent over to pick something up. God kicked me in the ass and he said, "You're an addict." And I was like, "Oh, I really am." And that was the first time in 14 years of active addiction that I had actually admitted that I was an addict and believed it and accepted it, because I didn't look like everybody else. I did great things when I was using. I made changes for not only I never made them for myself because I never knew how, but I changed lives. And for me, that was what was, that was my purpose in life. Long story short, I chose at that time. It was either I was going to be homeless, I was going to leave the situation because I went into another toxic situation with a friend and I had to get out. So it was either go live on the streets, or me and my trusty dog go live on the streets, or I find another way, and sober living was the option. So I started calling and I ended up getting accepted to a sober living up in Thornton. And then it was great. Everything was doing well. I was really happy and gracious, and but I was still going through some health issues. I mean, while doing all of this, as you know, Kelly, uh I didn't take care of my health for 14 years either, my physical health. So, I got cataract surgery in March, and now I can see through BS and stupid. So, I could see. I got my eyesight back where I couldn't even read a piece of paper. So there's this whole journey in the last 9 months, because I just got 9 months on the 9th of September or of July. So, and I also turned 53, which I did not think I was going to do this year. I didn't think I was going to make it. So all of these things in the last 9 months, I've been in 2 sober living houses. Um, the first one became very toxic very quickly, and I removed myself because it wasn't safe for me mentally. And then I went to another one in Aurora, and things changed very rapidly, and we can get on into that in a minute. But I guess I could say about my journey. My journey of trauma started when I was less than 6 years old. I dealt and lived with trauma and never ever coped with trauma my entire life. For the longest time, I never even wanted to even acknowledge that, just like my addiction, that the trauma affected me, because did great things. And then when I got I used to do stand up, and when I got the diagnosis, one of my stand up jokes was, "Men are bipolar, women have personalities." I didn't realize how ironic that was until I got the diagnosis in 2017. And then I thought, well, for Luke, let's file for disability, because that'll never happen. I'm not that crazy. And I filed in September and got approved in November. That was devastating for me, because I didn't know that I was that sick. And still yet not knowing that I was that sick, and then dealing with the isolation and the trauma and all of the things that went along with what I was putting myself through, because I was using, because I was self-medicating. And that's one of the things that we have to change in this country. And I did not realize how much the effect of substance use disorder had on my inability to overcome and heal from the trauma and be able to learn to cope with the symptoms of borderline personality disorder. You know, it can be a very devastating disorder for people. And the hard thing is that people with borderlines are very functioning until they can no longer function. And I was fortunate to really be able to engage with some great therapists and get into EMDR. It took me several months, actually, and I have not really gone that far with EMDR. But I'm working on it. I don't know for anyone who's gone through EMDR, but you have to pick this safe place. So on my safe place, I'm on a dock painting with the Maharaji Ra and Stephen Furtick and my dog Thor, Piglet and a Piglet and Winnie the Pooh, and I'm painting, and I'm just listening to the water go by, and it's amazing how it's hard, but you can focus. You can learn to, and I'm learning to cope with all of that. And I've got a long way to go. But Kelly, I have come so far. And I'm so excited about my future. even 2 months ago, when I was put in a situation that was very, very triggering and very traumatic. And I actually spent 5 days on the streets. I didn't use, but I sure struggled. I found out that I had a possibility of having cancer in my uterus, as well as having small vessel disease in my brain. And I became very scared. I didn't know what to do. I was like, here I got sober, I got clean, and now I'm gonna die, because that's what we do. And I have worked very hard all these years with the therapy and things like that, but I never even understood like things like radical acceptance and how addiction or substance use is affecting our society in such a severe way that we're going to lose if we don't start fighting for ourselves and fighting for everyone who's suffering. And I guess now I've become a huge advocate and really push and promote BCC as an organization as well to recovery organizations, because I feel, because of what I experienced within sober living, I feel and am compelled to make sure that everyone who is in a sober living home has a fair chance of sobriety.
Mhm.
So I guess in a short note, I don't want to. Before the break, I'll talk a little bit about. I won't name the sober living that I was in. However, one thing that I discovered is going through this process that there is no oversight. Um, a situation became when I lived up in the first one in Thornton. Everything was great. I was doing great. Everything was great until I wasn't great anymore, because they used my mental illness against me to um what's the best word, to ambush me
Mhm.
and bully me. And that is not okay. And I fled because I had enough hope in me to know that that was not okay, and that no matter where I ended up, I was not going to stay in that situation because I would not have survived it. And people who don't know or understand anything about borderline personality disorder, is that disorder alone, and it's a behavioral disorder, understand, most people that attempt to take their life have some portion of a behavioral disorder, because it takes a behavior to take that life, to try to take that life, to not want to live. That's a behavior that is something that we, as people with behavioral issues, struggle with. It's not something that's automatic. I don't wake up in the morning and go, "Oh, I want to just want to die today because I don't love my life or I don't love myself." It's just yeah, the pain and the struggle, and then having a substance use disorder along with that. Um, and when going into sober living, I was very, very vulnerable. I was very at risk. Um, and Unfortunately, there was no oversight and there was no protection for someone like myself that could go from 0 to 360. It's a turbo, 0 to turbo in 2.5. There was no one there to help escalate me. Even in fact, when I reached out to another member, they took all of the messages that I had sent them, begging them to help me, and shared it with the entire house as if I was being a problem. And it was devastating. It took a long time. It took a little bit of a time, but I focused. I focused on really what was important, and I just kind of I have the ability now, because I'm clean, to step back and look at my responsibility in that situation. I would not have been able to do that if I was still using drugs.
Yeah.
And just recently, actually, when you asked me, you know a little bit about it, but I'll share with the viewers. I went to another sober living in Aurora. It was much more convenient, anyways. And it seemed like they had a little bit more compassion because it was a shared home with moms with women with children and things like that. And but I still kind of focused and started to do my own thing, and I never broke any rules, and I did everything that I needed to. And they were able to kick me out based on I was in a car accident and I wasn't able to get home, although I did everything I was supposed to, communicating with the house. I didn't relapse or anything. They were able, one person in the house was allowed, that wasn't a house manager or anything, was allowed to, by text message, kick me out of the house just with no reason, no explanation, no opportunity to defend myself, knowing that I had been in a car accident 30 miles from home and that I wasn't going to be able to be home. And that's got to change. There's no oversight for sober living. Luckily, this time around, I trust in the journey and that I'm going to be okay, but I'm really scared for other people who are going through this process that might have been where I was at even just 2 months ago, where they couldn't look at their medication because they wanted to take it all. And I have long way to go in my recovery. I know I'm not going to use, and neither time I used, or, then I went through those traumatic things, or, having the idea that I might have cancer or anything like that. I didn't use, but I was very, very scared, and I could have taken my life. And I'm here, and I'm so happy to be here. I'm so blessed. But I don't know that everyone's going to be so lucky that's struggling and fighting for their life to be in recovery. It's hard. It's when you live your life, going through your life thinking that there is no other life but using drugs, and the idea of stopping is so totally foreign and so totally out of any kind of comprehension or anything that feels familiar. It's scary. And I still get scared, you know, but I don't let fear consume me. But if I wasn't sober, that fear would consume me. It's scary out here, Kelly. I'm not gonna lie. You have people that are walking down the street like zombies, and you have you have our police officers and firemen driving by and seeing these people acting like the living dead, and no one's stopping to help them. And um I don't know, it's really important for me that if everyone could get educated on how to save someone's life that was in a mental health crisis, that was in a drug induced psychosis, or that was in a you know um yeah, overdose, or just and just whatever it is that they're feeling so lost and so dark that nothing even matters. If we can save other people's lives as other addicts, as other people that are mentally ill, helping ourselves, helping our community. It's almost like we need to create this whole cross culture or something for mental illness when everybody's got some sort of issues. It's kind of I don't want to, we don't want we people who are mentally ill do not want to be um uh, you know singled out, but we want to be acknowledged. We want the struggle of our what we go through to not be something we hide or stigma or just, oh, she'll get over it, or all of that language needs to stop. And the only way to do that is to educate people on how to see the signs, how to de escalate, and how to help them if there's nothing that you can do to help them.
Yeah, definitely. And I know a lot about your story, and so I am very thankful, of course, for you being on now and being sober. And I know as of last year the hoops that you have had to jump through. So we're gonna go to a short commercial or sponsored break, and then when we get back, I want to go back a little bit and have a chat about kind of what this journey has looked like for you, because as you mentioned, it's hard. The road to recovery is hard in itself, just getting sober, but then all the challenges that come with that. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. So we'll talk about that once we get back.
I'm an open book, so I'm ready.
This is Madeline Blair, the host of Unlocked, where we open possibilities for when the unexpected happens. Join me Thursdays at noon and again at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Business Network, right here on E360 TV.
And like that, we're back.
We're back. I love it when you say that. That is so cute.
So, right. If you are just joining us now, I am talking to Alex, who she came on my show about a year and a half ago and really was in the middle of addiction when you were on the show last time, and where you have come since then to now. Drastic change. You're now sober. You really gave us a background of what the experience has been like as you stepped into recovery and going into sober living housing, and really taking that journey to get out of an abusive relationship, also out of addiction. And so like I was saying before we went to the break, what I would love to talk about, and I think this is a really important conversation for us to have, is because I know how challenging it has been for you to just get into, first and foremost, a facility to get sober, and then getting into housing facilities. And I know that you have also been helping me, which I'm so thankful, with BCC Evolution and making those connections between recovery resources for people who might be experiencing homelessness and people who are really going through that recovery journey. And so there's a couple questions that are coming up, but
Sure.
First, what I would love you to talk about is, because I know coming back to Colorado and trying to find a facility in general that had an open bed was your first kind of hurdle that you had to jump over.
Yes, it definitely was to find a facility. I mean, granted, I still didn't, even though I was coming down off of 12 years of using meth. I still didn't see, I was using, but I wasn't an addict. So having the proper crisis workers to be able to determine that I not only needed mental health, I needed substance use support. And that was very difficult. That was very, very difficult. I ended up going into, a place here. And they stabilized me. I think I was there, what, 7 days, I think it was, wasn't it, Kelly, or something like that?
Probably. Yeah.
And they stabilized me. But while I was there, they wanted, here's an addict in a mental health facility. They wanted to give me more drugs. Go figure. And it wasn't until actually after I got out and I was in IOP. And funny story about IOP, I had a panic attack while I was in IOP. And I asked the facilitator, or, you know, the person doing the group or whatever, I needed to get my blood pressure checked, because one time while I was inpatient, it was 181 over like 160. It was like stupid crazy high. And so I asked to get my blood pressure checked. Instead of stopping the group, taking me out, making sure that I got my blood pressure checked, they sent me to the front in the middle of a panic attack. And the girl who was at the front desk she's like, I'll get you someone, and then went to lunch. Well, I sat there for an hour and a half waiting to get my blood pressure checked. And then I go back to the group for IOP. Well, I was hysterical, obviously. And it was like the second day of IOP, actually. And I was hysterical, obviously. And I wanted to have my blood pressure checked. Anyway, so the manager thinks, you know, has this opinion that I want to kill myself. If I wanted my blood pressure checked is so I don't have a stroke, I don't want to die. You know, obviously, right? So long story short, they take me, they're like, well, let's just have you evaluated. So they pretty much traffic me, this is the way I see it, into this room, lock up my purse, and still for another 2.5 hours, I did not get my blood pressure checked. I was waving down orderlies and texts and everything. I'm like, can y'all check my blood pressure so I know I'm not going to die right now? And finally, I mean, I had to take it up to administration and things like that. But here's a mental health facility, you know, supposed to be handling IOP, and then sitting there trying to put me back in after 9 days of already being there. So anyway.
Tell me, what is IOP for those that don't know?
Intensive use. So when you go inpatient for a mental health breakdown or crisis, you have the option as part of your treatment to be able to not have to stay 190 days or whatever, that you can do partial hospitalization, where you stay in facility, but it's not as stringent. I think you get to go home at night or something like that. Or you have intensive outpatient. It's IOP, intensive outpatient. And that means that you go 5 days a week, 3 days a week, you know, however many they see that you need, and you're in group, and you're in, you have group, and then you speak with a therapist, and then you speak with caseworkers and things like that, and so on and so forth. And that's where you get your services on the outside, as they say, as you get set up with your outside mental health professional, you know, your mental health care professional. You make sure that your medications are lined up and, you know, there for you, so that you don't have to worry about, okay, insurance, caseworkers, and things like that. Funny thing with me, because I get SSDI, I'm not eligible. I have Medicare. So trying to get Medicaid in this state not so that I can get anything for free, other than being able to have access to case management.
Yeah.
Individuals that have not only substance use disorder, but a severe debilitating mental or behavioral disorder need case management. We can't pick up the phone when we're trying to heal and hear, no, we can't help you. No, we can't help you. No, we can't help you. We don't have any housing. We don't have this. You can go on our wait list. But in the meantime, not knowing where we're going to be the next day, especially someone with a substance use disorder, because I can tell you that people don't like to welcome an addict into their home, even if they love you. Even if they're clean, they don't want to invite an addict into their home.
Yeah. And I know, like you and I had talked about this kind of back and forth on Facebook, and you had told me about how many people that you actually had to reach out to just even try to find housing and then try to find the facility. And in my brain, I was like, how can you even, like, as an addict, right, wanting to get clean, wanting to
Mhm.
get sober? And you mentioned that it took up until that moment that you're like, oh wow, I am an addict. Like, you had to come to this realization that you were an addict, and you are now navigating this system by yourself ultimately. I mean, you're super resourceful, but not everybody is that way, nor do they know how to be that way when they are trying to get sober and or going through recovery or even going through a mental health challenge. So I can,
It was over 100, Kelly.
geez, yeah.
I contacted every single sober living because I have a service dog. Granted, he is a psychiatric service dog. He is trained to save my life and keep me out of a jail cell. Uh, because I have a service dog, I was turned down almost 100 times.
Wow.
And then if they if there was a possibility, the rent on a room in a sober living facility was $1,200 to $1,400
Wow.
a month.
Wow.
And then you know, how does someone who has no resources other than the money that they make a month? Because then, a lot of them make you go out and get a job right away. You have to go out and get a job, whether or not you're mentally able to do that. And granted, I get that there should be no isolation, but okay, you go into these places, they say, go get a job. But if you hadn't had a job in 14 years, how the hell do you do that?
Yeah.
You're 30 years old and you're going to go work at Dairy Queen because you have to get a job. How defeating is that for someone, I mean, who doesn't have a recovery program? That it's hard finding recovery coaches or peer coaches. I mean, I didn't even know until like 2 months ago. I didn't even know that there was a recovery coach thing. I was like, is that a sponsor? And they're like, no.
Mhm.
Or having accessibility to recovery meetings. When I lived in Thornton, it was, Kelly, I'm not kidding you, an hour and a half to 2 hours to get to the meeting, and then an hour and a half to 2 hours to get back if you were able to make it back by curfew.
Wow.
And um many people who are older like myself, I'm 53. Um First of all, I do get a paycheck. I get a work. I live on $1,678 a month. So I had called affordable housing. Get on the wait list, get on the wait list, get on the wait list. Oh, you don't qualify for Denver Mental Health and Recovery. I called them. You don't qualify because you don't get Medicaid. I mean, the answers, the no's ranged from, okay, well, get this. You have to, okay, a 1-bedroom apartment, so-called tax credit affordable housing is 1,300. Well, they have like 40, 50, 30% or whatever. So the ones that we have available right now are 1,300, and you have to make 3 times the amount to qualify. But you've been homeless, so you don't have any rental experience, so you don't qualify.
Yeah.
So you could go to a shelter, but I'm not going to lie to you. A shelter scares the hell out of me. You know why? Because I don't want to meet my next addict.
Yeah.
And it's a great possibility. It's just like, it's tragic that the system is so flawed and we're doing everything that we can in our power. This last situation that I went through should not have happened. It was not right. They even apologized later, but it didn't. At this point, I'm having to go outside of the affordable housing venue. Luckily I have a little bit of support from a little bit of support to help me get approved and things like that. But I'm having to do it all on my own, and it's going to cost me 3 times, almost 2/3 of my income just to be able to get in a place because I'm currently unhoused, but that doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean when you and I had talked, right? Like my thought process, especially with this particular situation, is that the house really is keeping addicts in fight or flight because our brain
Mhm.
naturally like it wants to go towards pleasure, but when you are using substances or you are utilizing any other type of coping mechanisms, as we call them,
Mhm.
really what we're doing is we're trying to alleviate whatever in our life is happening, which could have been a trauma, it could
Mhm.
be a certain event that's happening. And ultimately, when you're using, you're really like finding a way to get out of fight or flight. And then when somebody gets sober, and now you're having to again navigate the system, you're having to figure out the rules, you're having to do all these things, go get a job when you haven't had a job in so long, and now you're being put into a housing situation that is putting you in fight or flight. I mean,
Right.
when we talked about that, I was like, how can this be the thing? Like putting an addict into fight or flight mode on a constant daily basis is not okay. And that
No, it's
is
not.
something that needs to be looked at for sure.
And when you look at there is no oversight for sober living. And I think sober living is a must. We have to continue to have effective, safe, supportive, and stable sober living opportunities for people who cannot afford to go out on their own. Granted, I was paying $800 for a month and I had a curfew, and I never broke any of the rules. I got into a car accident and that was wrong. That they did that, or one person decided that they were going to make all the rules, or to choose or whatever. The hard part is that it's almost like I feel, and this is the way I feel, and it's only because I feel so passionate about the people that are going through recovery. One of the hardest things of recovery, and people going to tell you all day long, oh, if you weren't using, you could be in our lives. Oh, if you didn't use drugs, da, da. Recovery is a lonely freaking place. All the people that didn't want you in their lives because you were using still don't want you in their lives because you were using. The people that you used with, that were your family, were your friends, that kept you from being lonely, that you had something in common, and you're not using anymore, so they don't have room in your life. So you spend a lot of time alone. And you go into these recovery homes, and they don't I mean, they say that, okay, well, you got to go to 3 recovery meetings a month. But do they say, let's go to a recovery meeting? Is there any kind of, I mean, and a lot of them do. I'm not going to say that they don't. But there is no, what's the word I'm looking for, Kelly? Other than oversight, there is no protection to the vulnerable. I mean, people who are in recovery, whether it's just coming out of a facility, or Department of Corrections, or whatever their situation is, they are vulnerable as hell. They are alone, they are scared, and they're going into a situation that they have no idea about, and being told that everything will be okay if you abide by these rules, until personalities over principles.
Mhm.
And hopefully, I don't know what it's going to take to change that. Unfortunately, everybody that is within those or sober living organization that I was in, many of the people are supporting me in the fact that it was wrong. However, I'm still unhoused.
Yeah.
I have
Well, I
I
think
nowhere to go. If it wasn't for the kindness of my ex-husband and my daughter to give me a chance to not be alone, I would have been in that situation 2 months after I was in it the last time. And I'm not a bad person. I'm a very positive, supportive person. So to imagine that how many people have lost their lives because of this, it's really, really sad. Because my journey is not over. Luckily I have people like Kelli in my life and my therapist, and I have a few people, but enough people, but I wouldn't have those people in my life if I hadn't worked so hard. So I don't want to talk down about sober living. But things need to change. If we're going to stop these people being homeless and being put back on the streets so that they can go back to tent cities and use drugs, because that's what will happen, whether they've had 6 months, a year, or 5 years clean, if they don't have a safe and supportive place to go when they're in flight mode, they will use, because that's all we know. And the drugs aren't getting safer.
Mm-mm.
They're killing people every day.
Yeah. I think you brought up a really great point too about case management and
Yes. Oh my
having
God.
access.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but you know
No,
how I
you're
feel about case management, because
Yeah.
you gave me what, 10 resources, and every single one of them turned me down because I don't get Medicaid.
That's horrible. I mean,
And I don't
I
get
know
Medicaid. Yeah.
there's like a broken I know there's a broken system, and I totally don't want to like get on that tangent, but I think the important part of what we are talking about is how can we have compassion? How can we have empathy? How can we go into, whether, like you were saying, like a tent city, and not just fully judge people? Like, they learn from experiences, and sometimes people choose to be homeless versus
Right. For
having
sure.
housing, but it's also sometimes they also need just help to get like their driver's license or get a
Right,
job, or
identification, because without identification, you can't get a job. If
yeah.
you're not able to get a job, you're not able to put yourself in a more elevated situation. And it's sad. It's really sad that, you know, I don't know. I mean, I don't, I just, it breaks my heart to see these young people. I mean, when I first got into recovery, into the sober living, I had gone downtown because I had to come to Aurora for something. So I'm riding the train and I'm trying to figure all this out. And there was this young girl. She was 17. She was gorgeous. She should have been on like Next Top Model or something crazy like that, right? And she had a dog, so she was like totally talking to me, and she's like, "Can I walk with you?" And so I, as we're walking, I ask her, I'm like, I said, "You're on the streets, aren't you?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "What's your drug of choice?" And she said, "Fentanyl." She was 16 years old on the streets. Why is this beautiful young girl going to be a statistic? Because someone failed to parent them? Someone, the society altogether failed. And granted, kids, teenagers, oh man, sometimes you want to just take them out. They're teenagers, but when is society going to stop? When is alcoholism, when is drug addiction, when is that going to stop being a normal thing that our young people see or are exposed to? When is that going to stop? We stop that, we're going to stop a lot.
Yeah. I mean,
why are kids drinking at 9 years old? Why are they vaping at 10?
yeah. I mean, and that's, I've actually, so knowing your journey, and I've had several other friends that are recovering addicts, and I watch TV shows now, and it's such a normal thing, right? To drink or do drugs or whatever it might be. And of course, in Colorado, we, have marijuana and all the other things. And, so it's like when is society going to catch up? We caught up on smoking, right? They don't show any more commercials about cigarettes, or I haven't seen any in years and years and
Yeah,
years.
no.
So it's one of those things, like, it has become a norm. So how do we change the conversation almost also? Like, how I know I've had a previous guest on here, we were talking about like sex and younger kids and how you
Right.
talk to them about that, right? And she said that she's always been open with her kids and said that when you have consensual adult sex, right? Like, that's the words that she
Hmm.
used. So how can we change that conversation even around alcohol or anything in general? Is like, as an adult, when you're drinking adult beverages, or like, it has to be part of the
Right.
conversation. And I know you said it earlier too, is that education piece of educating people about, again, not judging somebody, being empathetic, being compassionate, giving them the tools and the skills to identify whether they're in a crisis or non-crisis situation, and just having those open conversations like you did with that girl on the street, right? Like,
Hmm.
they want to be seen, they want to be heard,
Right.
they want to be understood and acknowledged and not alone.
Right. But
So
they only know the safest place to be alone the safest place is to be alone or invisible, because then they won't be abused by people who say that they love them. One of the things I want to bring up, I wanted to kind of share today, is the Amber Alert that was issued today. This is a young woman that I've known since she was 7 years old, was the one listed in the Amber Alert that took her baby from a safe place. And I know her struggle. We no longer speak. We're not friends. But I couldn't see myself being that one that would be like, oh, she's batshit, she's this or that. She's a horrible individual. She's not a very nice person, but she's very sick.
mhm.
She's very sick, and she's she has several children that are traumatized because of her actions and her behavior. But she's still a human being. She's still someone's child. She's still someone's mom and someone's sister. And when we look at someone who's in a mental health crisis, or someone that's in the thralls of addiction or alcoholism, or a mental illness or whatever, we're still someone's child. We're still someone's sister, brother, mother, grandmother, wife, friend. We're still human beings that just didn't know how to make better choices. And I'm 53 years old, and I'm just now learning how to make better choices. And I'm pretty smart. Just think of all the people who aren't as strong as me. Sorry.
No, you're good. What I would love, and thank you for sharing that too, because it is very, very true, is we're all human, and sometimes we make bad choices, and sometimes we don't do the things that we think our life is going to be like, or our life doesn't turn out exactly how we think it's going to, but we're still a human. We're still somebody's kid. We're, that person. And to be able to be compassionate and empathetic and not be judged by our situation is huge. And so I just appreciate you being able to come on the show and be vulnerable and share your experience, because I know that I have seen the growth
Thanks.
from then till now. And I know I tell you that all the time, but I am just so thankful that you are able to share your journey and be able to help BCC Evolution, because I don't know everything, and you have been so helpful in connecting resources, and I'm getting a better understanding of what it looks like for somebody that is going through this recovery journey, and how important it really truly is to have resources and information and the
Adequate
education.
resources. I got to tell you, just real quick, I don't mean to cut you off when you talk
No,
about
you're good.
resources.
Yeah.
I called 211. No joke. 211. How much money? Let's evaluate how much money 211 receives from, grants and things like that to help people. You know what I got told? This was 2 days ago, Kelly. I said, is there any, first month's rent or deposit assistance? I'm not trying to have you save my apartment. I'm trying to help you get me housed. Okay. I'm going to do everything. I just need a little bit of financial boost. You know what their answer was? This is after I called like 5 people. Okay. Their answer was, no, we only have resources for families with children and the military. And I was like, So what we're doing is we are creating an environment that people who are defeated have no chance unless they're able to pull money they don't have, because they have to survive with what they do get to pay that extra deposit and administrative fees and application fees and all of that. Pretty crazy, huh? 2. They had 2. I told them I had 5 if then asked them if they'd like them. I mean, I haven't gotten any answers back yet, but this at the same time, when we're talking about resources, Kelly, this has got to stop. I would rather all the money go to you and you and I actually create some effective case management where people aren't giving a list of phone numbers and saying, here, crazy person, call them. They'll help you not. I hate to say it that way, but Jesus Christ, this has got to stop. There's just an open, I see nonprofits that are out there doing what it takes to change. And then you've got these other ones that are just resource dumps. Or, cash cows for people that are preying on the vulnerable.
Yeah. No, I think that's why, that's why I, and you know this, but why I'm so passionate about like building what you and I are really starting to create as this trusted resource hub, because we can vet people out, but we can also refer you to the right person, not just be like, here's all the list of people that we have. No, like, come to me, let's have a conversation, and then I will find you that person, because I know that 1, they're trusted, and 2, they're going to actually be able to help you. So, and I would love to talk to you about this forever and ever, but we are coming to the end, unfortunately. But I am so thankful for you to be able to come on and share where you're at today. And maybe down the road, you'll just come back again and share once you get into.
I will. I'm going to share everything I learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And we together are really trying to bring as much information and resources, and trying to just even change how BCC Evolution looks at recovery and mental health challenges in general. So, Alex, I'm so grateful for you joining me on the show again, and I will talk to you, tomorrow.
Thank you. So. I love you.
I love you. Thank you. All right, y'all. That was an amazing episode, another episode of Make Mental Health Matter. Again, on Wednesdays, I bring guests who really share their journey through being a warrior, whatever they have been through in their life, and that piece of hope. You never know what somebody might be experiencing. You never know what they might be going through. And so really the whole point is to share these stories of hope, so that maybe if you or somebody else in your life might be experiencing something similar, you know that there are resources and information and people out there that you can follow and really understand what they've been through. Whatever you do, come back, join us again on Monday. Mondays, I bring guests who are either professionals or advocates of mental health, giving tools and tips and information based around mental health and suicide prevention. I've actually had a whole bunch of different people on the Mondays and the Wednesdays. So no matter what you do, join us for another episode and make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss another episode with another amazing guest. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye, y'all.